God is in this place, and certainly we need that with us this evening. My name is Gloria Norwood. I start each meeting this way. I volunteer to facilitate these meetings. I am not an elected official. I have no power. If anybody else wants this job, I'm ready to turn it over to them at any point. But for now, I don't have any volunteers, so I'll just keep muddling along. 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 weeks ago, Marcia, Phil, and I and another small group of people at the church met Matthew Kay. His name is something else, but we're just going to call him Kay because we can't pronounce his last name. And he jokes about it, so I'm not insulting. Since that time, and he came and introduced himself and some of the things that are going on in our city, Matthew was here and it was a very good meeting. Marcia and Phil Williams and I decided that we would move forward and try and come together as a community of Harrisburg to be prepared to participate in all the exciting things that we potentially are hoping for the city of Augusta and for Harrisburg. We named this group Harrisburg Citizens Group. It hasn't been voted on. If you need to change it, we can. We needed something to refer to this group as. That explains that. This is officially our 4th meeting of this group after the first meeting with Matthew. So we're going to start tonight. We have been starting with introducing ourselves, but praise the Lord, we have so many people here, we're not going to take the time. So do meet your neighbor and get to know the people that you can get to know them, but we will just kind of skip over that. The first thing we're going to talk about tonight is opportunity zones. Now, we talked about that specifically on Friday morning at meeting number 3. Dallas was here and Melanie Wallace was here representing parts of our city government. We're going to start with them again. They're going to do a summary, underlined capital letters, summary of what they discussed on Friday, because probably 80% of you didn't hear it. These are notes, if any of you can see them, that were taken from our meeting on Friday that Aunt Catherine wrote. They're going to use some of those and talk about opportunity zone, what it is, and whatever they want to get into with that to explain it. After they have their summary presentation, we will then go to discussion of the people who want to have comments, who want to talk about it. The first part of this meeting is going to be dedicated to that question. This is a huge issue in this community. Huge issue. And so we have to have strong, truthful, dynamic statements that we can build our knowledge on and build our opinions on, and hopefully bind our wounds and move forward as a more healthy group of people. With me? I'm kind of a stickler for time, so if any of you want to know that, we'll be out of here maybe an hour, hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I'll kind of judge that. But the first part of the program tonight is opportunity zones. Alex.
Thank you very much, Gloria. I am in the mayor's office. Many of you may have known my predecessor, Karen Hickson, who's now at Georgia Regents University. Melanie Wilson and Matthew Quatnitz, or Matthew Gay. Quatnitz. Just say it quickly, and then you're probably good. So I'm going to start in terms of opportunity zone and then allow for Melanie or Matthew to add anything that I may have omitted, but I'm going to try and make this as concise as possible. In terms of what an opportunity zone is, it's a job creation tax benefit for businesses located inside of that area. Okay? That is all it is. So it is intended to produce job creation within a designated area. Prior to 2010, the state of Georgia determines the job tax credits that can be issued by counties based upon a tier system, Tier 1 through Tier 4. The tiers are determined by ranking of the counties based upon unemployment, per capita income, and percentage of the population beneath the poverty level. Prior to 2010, Richmond County was Tier 1, which is the lowest performing counties from a ranking standpoint. In 2010, we rose to a Tier 2 county, which is good because it means that our indicators relative to other counties were performing better. But what that means, the state of Georgia allows for Tier 1 counties to offer the greatest amount of job creation tax credits in trying to lure new business into their communities. As a Tier 1 county, a local institution, so our Economic Development Authority, can offer $3,500 per net job created greater than 2 jobs. Moving up to a Tier 2 county, that's reduced to $2,500 per job created with a net 10 jobs created. So suddenly, that difference was $1,000 per job, and also moved the threshold from 2 jobs being created to 10 jobs. Within an opportunity zone, what it allows is for those Tier 1 level benefits. Plus, and this was something I failed to mention on Friday and emailed to you, plus it also expands the industries that those job credits can be applied to. Within a Tier 1, there are certain sectors that are omitted, retail being the biggest of which. But within an opportunity zone, all jobs apply, assuming that they meet the net 2 job creation. So in 2010, there were 3 opportunity zones created within Augusta, one being here in Harrisburg, the other being in Laney Walker Bethlehem, and the other being off of Deans Bridge Road. Obviously, I think that there's been discussion in terms of public input that was not sought. I can't necessarily explain, why that was. One of the things that I'm excited in terms of talking with Melanie Wilson, is her approach in terms of development and seeking local neighborhood input, her plans in terms of utilizing neighborhood planners. But I think that really, because it was a job creation tool within our tool bag, this is a good thing. It doesn't have anything to do with being able to manipulate zoning regulations, so an opportunity zone does not allow for a parcel of land to be turned from residential to another use. Those things still have to go through the standard process, but in terms of what an opportunity zone is, it is simply a tax credit for job creation. I'm trying to make it as concise as possible. First, any questions just in terms of opportunity zone or anything I may have said?
What about an existing business? Does that apply?
It applies to either an expansion or a new business that's coming in.
New, existing.
An existing business that expands. So I was actually prior to the mayor's office, I worked in the logistics field. RBW Logistics is an Augusta-based company. We had brought on a new customer and were creating 20 new positions. And so we were going through a job creation tax credit as a result of creating that. So we were an existing business that were expanding due to a new customer, and we qualified for that. So new or existing.
Are you saying that's in effect now?
Yes.
In this area?
Yes. And that is something, in the conversations that I've had, the greatest mistake that we've had, and I think it goes along with public input, is the fact that, we've done this and we haven't publicized it, that we haven't gotten the word out there, either prior to the designation or even after the designation was made. I was meeting today with, I'm going to mispronounce the name, Zapata Technologies. They're located in Enterpriseville. They're a technology company. They're actually hiring 15 people this week, and they have put together a presentation for us, really to introduce themselves to us, being the city. And they began in 2007 as a startup, and now at the end of the week will be up to about 50 employees. And in their presentation to us, they had the benefits of the opportunity zone and what that's provided. But he also complained that he had met with his CPA and his attorney, and neither of them had indicated these benefits. It was only from talking from someone else that he realized that these tax credits were available to him. The question came out on Friday, how many companies have taken advantage of this? I don't know. It is public record. That information can be found out, but I don't think that it's been leveraged or utilized to the extent that it could.
Can I ask you one other question, and I'll be quiet?
Yes, sir.
Have you advertised this at all? Is this known to businesses?
It is, in my analysis, has been underutilized in terms of publication and marketing, in terms of the extent possible. And it possibly hasn't been utilized at all. But I don't want to say that, we've utilized it, or we haven't utilized it when we may have in some circumstances. But certainly, I think it's reasonable to say it's been extremely underutilized in terms of business owners and also in attracting new business.
Who in the mayor's office is knowledgeable? You're the person contacted on getting this
Yes.
information?
Yeah, and I'll leave business cards. Feel free to contact me. Yes, ma'am.
What are the chances that this opportunity zone was put in to bring in overlays in the neighborhood, which would really, really upset this entire area?
That's not a question. I don't know.
Actually, this doesn't have anything to do.
Well, introduce yourself. No, introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Melanie Wilson. I am the Director of Planning and Development for the City of Augusta. And I've worked in a variety of places regarding environment zones, opportunity zones, but also doing some innovative planning, more specifically in Baltimore and other places like that. But this doesn't have anything to do with zoning. And I can't stress that enough. One of the things I did for you all was to bring a map that has the boundaries of the opportunity zone. And it also shows the vacant commercial property building so that you can utilize it to, as a marketing tool for your community. But it doesn't have anything to do with zoning. This is not in any way, any shape, a method that we would use to apply an overlay for zoning.
Well, they went straight to that, and Lane Walker, after they got the opportunity zone, they went straight to overlay, and caused a lot of upset within the community because it was found out about after it was put out there, and found out and forced public hearings on it.
What do you define as an overlay? Because I wasn't here then.
This is it. This is it right here.
Okay. Well,
And your zoning ordinance provides that a landowner that owns 10% of the property in the district, he can have an engineer draw up a plan, and he can bring it to the commission. And if the other folks in the district don't catch on to what's going on, they're out of luck. That's what almost happened here.
okay. Well, all I can say is this: I was not here when that went on. I don't work that way. I generally try to make sure that I involve the neighborhood in processes like this. You might not get the exact thing that you want, but at least you're going to know.
But what
That's
happened-
what I do.
but
I wasn't here about with regards to the
But it was
overlay.
for a commission, the whole Laney Walker overlay. That's this whole map. But the only sitting notices out to this one corner right here, the W4 zone. And people were furious because
And I don't doubt it, sir, but again, that was housing and community development. That was done before I got here. I'm just telling you that dealing with this overlay zone here with this community and any other community while I'm here, I believe in letting people know. It would be posted on our website. You will know. I can't do anything based on what people did in the past. I can just tell you that right now, that is not the intention at all for this opportunity zone. Period.
That's a little bit different than what was stated, was that this has nothing to do with overlays. Now it says that's not the intention at this time is to do overlays.
It
So
has
this-
nothing to do with
But
overlay.
it is possible, correct?
But it's possible to put overlay anywhere. I mean, let's get to it.
I'm just saying, I just want to be clear. Wait, I want to be clear.
Okay.
Wait, hold on, wait, I got a question.
Okay.
Y'all just said that this is in no way has anything to do with overlays and can be used to change zoning. That's what you just said.
That's right. That's right.
But yet, we just showed you where 10% of the land is owned by a group that gets together, it can be, and it doesn't go before planning and zoning.
But,
Am I right?
but what I'm saying that's what I'm saying. I'm just telling you that the opportunity zone is not designed to do anything to impact your zoning. It is designed to help get businesses into neighborhoods where there needs to be job creation. That's it. I can't talk. I promise you, if you give me your contact information, I will look into what happened here. And
Folks don't like to talk about that in public, I noticed. Now,
Well,
this is my question.
Okay.
Property taxes, OC, what effects does it have on property taxes and property tax abatement, if any?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
And an enterprise zone or, an urban redevelopment area, start to affect, zoning, tax abatement, those things. An opportunity zone, the only thing that it impacts is tax credits for job creation. So an opportunity zone has a singular focus. Now, it is often linked with an enterprise zone or urban redevelopment zone because those must be designated in order to create an opportunity zone. But an opportunity zone in and of itself simply has to do with job tax creation or tax benefits for job creation. And in terms of an overlay, and I may be uncertain, but an overlay could be introduced in an area that doesn't have an opportunity zone.
That's not the case here. It's funny that the boundaries of the overlays match exactly on y'all's website these OZs. So how do we explain that? That there's no other overlays in any other parts and we can't see any of the OZs in other parts? Is that just coincidence?
Well, the thing that I want to bring up was, I saw on, I think, the Augusta's website, they said that enterprise zones and opportunity zones were coincidental.
Right. And
So if
opportunity.
an enterprise zone carries property tax abatement, then they're one and the same.
Right. In terms of an opportunity zone, it must exist within an enterprise zone or an urban redevelopment area.
So they are connected. It's not that there's no connection, they are connected.
No, I'm explaining to you. The thing about
I think
making
the
this.
simplest way to look at this, honestly, is that I'm sure years ago, when they came out and they were looking at creating empowerment zones, this was the community that was probably one of the areas that was an empowerment zone. One of the byproducts of empowerment zones was to create an opportunity for people to have opportunity zones so that they can have additional tax benefits to get people to come and open businesses in their neighborhood. I think that what happened with this, honestly, is that probably was an urban renewal plan. And for urban renewal plans, then you would have what you just described there. But that's not what this is. And that's all I can speak to, but I'm just explaining to you what the difference is. And I've also got some brochures that at least spells out information about opportunity zones. It tells you about the tax benefit, the different tier levels, and things of that nature. And again, I'll be glad to
Sorry you weren't here. We just have followed this all over the county because property rights are getting stepped on in Richmond County. So, we all got together. I live in Jason's neighborhood. I own property downtown. It just seems like every time we get looking over here, we all say, hey, look over here. This is a wonderful new thing. It's going to create jobs. Somehow it ends up benefiting groups of people. And it ends up, we don't even know about it. We end up with tax issues or zoning issues. Just wonder, this wasn't that long. This wasn't in the 70s. This overlay got in lane, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? We're not talking about ancient history. We're talking about 2 years ago.
Well, and again, that is why, because I believe in full transparency. I can't bring it down because I want to see what the zoning is in your
have all
areas.
that, but
And
it's
if you've
just
got that
too late.
information with regards to,
Because we didn't have any input. We have all that. We know what it is.
well, all I'm saying to you is that when we had a meeting, they didn't have it at the meeting. So I brought it so that as you're talking about it, you've got a map that shows what the zoning is. You also have something that shows what the vacant parcels are. And you can decide to use it as a marketing tool to get businesses to come into the community or not. That's on you. I decided that I would at least offer that to the community to try to help you guys as you are doing some of the planning initiatives that you have started. I can't say, and I can't address what happened 2 years ago. I wish Mr. Adams, who was here, because he was here, he probably would have been able to better explain what happened.
Why don't you cut out of here real quick and start talking about the
But
And I think this also provides an opportunity, to bring Matthew into the conversation, because I will tell you, particularly for those that want to engage Melanie, further. The thing that's excited me, is really her approach, which in the smaller group on Friday, we were able to go into a little bit more detail in terms of her approach from a neighborhood planner standpoint, where she's at, but also where she envisions her department going. And certainly, it's important to understand where we are now and how we got here.
Can I speak for Harrisburg and say how we got here, since all of you are new? I have notes. I mean, this has been going on a long time. You can laugh if you like. The Harrisburg Opportunity Zone, our questions are, what does it mean, which you've been discussing, and why all the secrecy behind it? Why do we deserve a public hearing, which the law says that if it's applicable? Well, here's a bit of history for Harrisburg. We began our activism as a very solid group in 2007. We had a very strong board of directors. And we started it because Eric Montgomery of Historic Augusta said, and I quote, "If not checked soon, the neighborhood will be harder to save." We took that on as an issue for our neighborhood. We live in this neighborhood. Many of you do not. We took that on as a challenge. We soon found out that the Kroc Center would be raising money, hopefully, to bring a Kroc Center in here. We were involved in every single meeting of that Kroc Center, and it was all private money. They did not have to involve this neighborhood. They did not have to involve activists. We had been in the news weekly. So we have the Kroc Center coming on board. Then Harrisburg becomes part of the DDA. We are now under the umbrella of the DDA. We had 1 day to give our DDA director our wish list for Harrisburg, 8 hours, once we became under the DDA. But because all of this was going on and we had movement going on, we were excited, we were energized as a group, as a board of directors. This Harrisburg Association has been in place since 1972 and has been very active. After that, a flurry of events took place, which we all came forward for. Every single meeting that was open to the public and to us, we were there. And I'll just list them. The monthly announcements of the updates of the Kroc Center. We were at every single one of them. The DDA and Historic Augusta began a 3-phase study of every home in Harrisburg. And they got a grant to do that. We were a part of every bit of that. The Georgia Conservancy came in and did their blueprints for successful communities. We donated money to that, and we were at everything that was done as a part of that. Right after that, Lifelong Augusta Design Charrette rolled in right behind it. We're beginning to think, what is all this is going on? Certainly something great is going to happen. This is all back in 2008, 9, and 10. Then the Sibley Mill cleanup all started. There were public hearings all about that. Somewhere in the midst of all of this Opportunity Zone happened in 2010 when I was running for mayor of Augusta, and we never had an opportunity to know what it was. And the year prior to that, we had a 50-year member, resident of Harrisburg, that ran for District 1 Commission. So we deserved a public hearing. But it says, if applicable. Okay, how do you define that? How does the state define who it's applicable for and who it's not applicable for? So that is our upset with all of this. And then what went on in Laney Walker, right after the Opportunity Zone came about in Laney Walker. I know you were not here for any of this, but this is our history. We have been actively involved in this community. We have been jerked from meeting to meeting to meeting, to public hearing to public hearing to public hearing. We want to know now why we're all here for this one. What is coming? What is the truth about it? Who is putting the money up for it? What is going to happen? It doesn't make sense to any of us at this point. So we've been dragged through. And I'm going to leave you with this. Through these years that we were active, there were 236 media reports from 2007 to 2010 speaking of our activism right here in Harrisburg, and they're on our website. Now, it angers me because all of this was done in dark of night, or however it was done, without any input from us, the ones who were striving to save our own community. Now, you have the history. And that's why all these people are here tonight. And we go and we fight for this community and other communities in this area because of our leadership in this city has put us in this position. And we want to know the truth. We want to know it. We want to know it. Laney Walker or Ms. D. Mathis sitting right there. We want to know what happened with the Sibley Shacks down in Old Town. And we want to know what's going to happen here.
Well, and honestly, all I can do is listen. But my takeaway from it, is the passion, and that's exciting. And part of the reason that matched with what Melanie and her approach is, I think that creates a powerful combination. And Matthew, some of you may have read about him or have met him. He really is leading the Mills District that we've read news accounts of. What is it? And I'd like for him to come up and talk a little bit about that, because he was the one that engaged Gloria and really started this. Because one of the things that early on is referred to as the Mills campus, and we want to stress that this is a district. This isn't simply about GRU. This is much larger than that, and we need Harrisburg being an integral part of that. And I know based upon past experience, what that may sound like. But I think the refreshing thing is, you have some individuals here that may not know or appreciate the history, but in terms of talking with their prior experiences and how they've worked in the other cities they've done business, I think it's going to be refreshing. Certainly, I know that George is gone and he had 43 wonderful years of service, but also sometimes it's nice to have a new approach. And so, Melanie, one, thank you, but Matthew, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the district.
Thank you. So, I really appreciate everything that you all, especially you three, have brought up. And I'll just start with the fact that I come here, I started as a community activist fighting development in Seattle, Philadelphia, and basically came to professionalism on that because there was no one on the other side fighting for the neighborhood or working with the neighborhood. So while I understand the context of what you're saying, I think the context of this meeting is that we reached out to you telling you we want to work with you to start organizing before there is a plan, before there is something that's already determined or an overlay district or something of that nature. I wasn't part of this opportunity zone, and now I appreciate why you were talking about it, because I was asking, why are we talking about opportunity zones? Nobody's proposing one here at this point. I did read the article that you had written, I don't know exactly when that was, maybe 2 years ago. But I encourage you to be as skeptical as you want of me. Call whomever you want, call me out on anything I say. That's why I'm here. I don't work for the government. I'm here as an intermediary between communities like yourself, business.
Excuse me, wait a minute. Did you just say you don't work for the government?
I sure did.
So you don't have, we didn't approve $500,000, $800,000 to pay your staff.
No, you absolutely did not.
That's not county money. You're not
No, I don't receive a penny of county money. Every dollar that I've received so far has come from Starbucks and a private donor. The only dollars that have come from the county were $100,000 to renovate 600 Broad Street and $100,000 that's supposed to come for architectural studies of Harrisburg. I'm not allowed to take that money. That's a conflict of interest.
And so who pays you?
I just said that the Starbucks.
So Starbucks pays you. So you're a private business, private corporation guy.
The nonprofits, yeah. So
Maybe we can be polite and listen and just see what the devil likes.
I think the First Amendment applies here. The man says he's open. I just had a question.
Yeah.
Probably answer the question. Did you say ask me?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with it. There's no, you dig in as much as you want. You're not going to
That's all I'm saying. We're going to have a conversation.
Basically, the purpose of the organization that was created, which is a nonprofit, is that Starbucks came in. I was part of the team that selected this location from about 127 different locations. And I'm not an employee of Starbucks. I'm an independent organization called quadruple bottom line partners that works on balancing economics, social justice, sustainability, and cultural vitality. And their culture doesn't mean arts, it means how you as a community define yourselves as a community, your history, the historic character, the ethnicity, the heritage, the physical grain, whatever it is. You guys determine what that last one means. So at the conclusion of that process, Starbucks wanted to donate some money to the mayor to create a new position in his office. And his response was, don't create a position inside the government. We have problems. We have issues that need to be resolved from outside the government. We need someone to come in and be in between the community, the businesses, the government, and citizens. So from that, the organization that I'm working on was created. It took them about 3 or 4 months before I came here, because I don't believe in just that any system can work anywhere. You can't just impose something from somewhere else and decide that that works somewhere. So I turned down more places to go than I do go. And that's because I have a very particular kind of thing that I do, which is this quadruple bottom line development. So we spent about 3 months seeing if that actually could work here, and then I accepted coming here in the fall, which was a little bit less than a year ago now. So in the fall, the first thing that we start is trying to read all the plans that exist and learn some of the histories before we propose any project. And in fact, the Mills District proposal came out about a year faster than I would have liked, for the reason that the university was moving so fast that their development just would have ramrodded over any community plans, government plans, funding streams, and what would have occurred would have been very negative in terms of trying to improve dollars that could come in to pay for social services. Right now, I'm happy to talk about this at length, but the key issue from my perspective in this city, besides whatever you want to say about how government functions, is that there's a financial hole that is extremely large. And that hole is based on the fact that the population is incredibly dispersed, and people are building things all over the place without a coordinated plan. And so we don't have enough taxes to pay for social services. There's not enough taxes to pay for schools. There's not enough taxes to pay for road repair. There's not enough taxes to pay for safety. So where's that money supposed to come from? Every time you raise the taxes, the people who have money move out because they don't want to be in a place that has high taxes. So the purpose of the type of economic development that I do is to try to come up with projects that follow that quadruple bottom line. So they can't be just build something to make money and everyone gets pushed out, but how do you create projects that will add to the tax base without increasing the tax rate? So how do you do that? You try to bring together all these different plans to something that people can agree on, and then you go around to different groups like this. All I do here is speak to communities, business, government, about what is going to go wrong about the plan. We spent the afternoon talking about the plan for the municipal building and an urban redevelopment area and something totally different, where what was happening there was very similar to what you just described. There was a plan being pushed forward that it wasn't clear what it was. And our role in that was to say, stop, not okay. This is not the way things should proceed. We have to figure out how to get all the stakeholders in the room. And it's not that what you're proposing is necessarily bad, but the process is bad. So we can't move forward with that. Do you have a question, sir?
I have two, actually. Could you give me the name of either the private donor or the LLC in question?
The LLC. Well, Payne College is going to be the donor. The money hasn't been received yet.
And what about the
And Starbucks
nonprofit?
is the other. What's that?
What is the nonprofit's name?
Augusta Regional Collaboration Project. It's a project under the CSR Foundation right now, CSRA Foundation. And the purpose of that is so that we don't spend the money on hiring new people to do administration and billing and all of that stuff. They just take a percentage.
Very
off the top.
commendable. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sir.
Just so everybody knows, there are a lot of things that impact the property and these types of developments and these types of changes are coming into effect.
Mm-hmm.
One of them that didn't get touched on is the big part of Harrisburg is what is called the tax allocation district.
Yeah.
And that, to me, could you explain, because the tax allocation district basically was set in 2008, and that was before I guess a lot of the real estate values went down because of the financial crisis. So it's been set up there at a pretty high plane.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole idea is whatever district is 7,000 acres or are down almost 10% from Richmond County by now. They set this level, and to the extent that the taxes go up, then they take this and they allocate that increase to property tax. And it's a school tax, and it's also the county tax. And it goes into a pot, and then it goes into infrastructure for developments within that district. However, by doing that, once you do that, you've taken off, if the cost of services in that district grow 15%, and you've taken that 15%, then the other 90% of the county has to make up for that. So it looks like to me that it's just sort of a useless proposition. And the other question I would have is how does that, the fact that you have this tax increment on say the mills was a private development, and they came in here and you got this tax increment, so you're paying this tax. Well, how does that fit with the enterprise zone where there's tax abatement? Because like me, there's a conflict there. So if a new business comes in, surely they can't do both. I like to think. Because then this comes into play. Because beside your particular development, you've got people that are aggregating property around you. And if you have the misfortune of being in the middle of some of that aggregated property, you have one of these overlays put on you. And also there's an issue of under the tags, there's also capability of the city to go in there and reconfigure the streets and do all kinds of things. And I don't think anybody understands this. Because I know from personal experience out in Columbia, we had charrettes and everything sounded nice and wonderful. But what came out on paper in the final ordinance was totally different. So, folks, if you value your property, you better watch what these folks are doing, and you better watch it from start to finish. Because there's no telling what's going to happen to you if you don't.
Well, I couldn't agree with that statement more, and I encourage you to do that. I will describe the financing tool briefly and the difference between those two. But that's not exactly why I'm here, and I do want to get to the point of why I'm here so that you can decide if you want to do that or not. But can I just have a show of hands? How many people are very interested in hearing how that financing tool works? Raise your hand. Okay, so about a quarter. So a tax allocation district is basically the idea that if you're going to do development in an area that currently has a lot of vacancy and not a lot of activity going on, by putting in that development, you're automatically going to raise the tax base. So for example, if I put in a big residential community, that suddenly a vacant property that's owned by the government to a residential community that's owned by a private player, you actually know exactly how much tax that's going to be. And the county can allocate its portion of that tax, some amount of years of that, to pay for creating the residential community in order to induce them to do it. I'm using an example. It can be used for a lot of different things, generally what's called infrastructure, but it's been bent pretty far in order to pay for just about anything. So, just to be frank, it's used to induce development to come in. And the key part is what the gentleman pointed out, that it's not always measured. And in fact, I can show you studies from around the country because it turns out that TADs are something that everyone has in one form or another. They're all called tax increment financing, helpful increment financing allocation districts, and basically there's a big debate among people like me and academics about whether or not you ever come out ahead in that equation. And it's all about how much you can actually size predictably what's going to happen and how much of the percentage of the area you choose to induce to come in that way. There's something that's not very well known called the but-for clause that exists in about every state constitution but is ignored a lot of times because people don't know it, which basically says you shouldn't spend public dollars unless the development would not happen but for you spending public dollars. Because if it would happen anyway, you're wasting money, and that money should be directed to something else. So there's different kinds of things that you need to induce. One of them is new development and infrastructure, like if there weren't storm drains, so people didn't want to build housing because people wouldn't want to live there, or there weren't sidewalks or something like that. And then there's also businesses that might relocate, but it could be cheaper or easier for them to be somewhere else. And so you try to convince them to come to an area where their presence would cause more housing, more retail sales, more activity on the street that would be safe, that would create more safety. And for that, you might try to abate their taxes. But for a new business, an operating business coming in, to get TAD dollars doesn't necessarily make sense because they wouldn't build something necessarily. They could just be moving into an area. They're often used depending on the need of the perceived business coming in, and then depending on who makes the deal, either it's in balance or out of balance. And there's certain strictures that were brought up today, for example, about what percentage of the budget can be allocated to TAD and how much of the area can be used for TAD. There have been some good points brought up about whether or not in the first TAD year we've already exceeded the amount that we've generated, in which case we shouldn't be issuing any more TAD projects. One of the things that we try to participate with is trying to actually make that objective. Let's see the numbers, let's put it forth, and let's talk about whether or not that's true, rather than arguing about if it's true or if it's not true. So, is that enough on that topic? Good, in terms of answering that question, can I proceed into why I came here?
Well, just one.
Okay.
Because you're in one situation, but there are people that are more or less the way mode that I've operated in as being property owners or developers. If they came in here and say, decided to do some sort of residential project, and their LLC or whatever employ more than 2 people, could they get the $3,500 and then get tax abatement, and then how does the tax allocation district apply to somebody like that? Because it seems like they can't get it all, I don't think.
They shouldn't be able to. In practice, sometimes they do. It's a negotiated agreement. So like when we came to, when I came with Starbucks, we negotiated for incentives, and in that case, we negotiated against the Economic Development Authority, Walter Sprouse. And we argued about how much money we were bringing in versus how much money they were giving us, and what were the truth of those numbers or not. And in the best case, you come to an agreement that's balanced. One of the issues you have here, which goes back to the fact that you don't have a tax base, is that you don't have staff in the city whose job that is. You don't have anyone doing that. And that's one of the roles that I try to help the city with. Of course, I'm not, as I said before, I'm not a city employee. So I sit in the middle having to answer to everyone on every side, which I think is actually a better place to be, because there's only one, you basically have to make a deal that everybody agrees with, or something doesn't happen. Now that does require all parties to come to the table, which brings me to why I'm here. The purpose of me being here is that there was this district proposed for your neighborhood. And you'll notice it doesn't have official boundaries. Why is that? It's supposed to prevent speculation or people coming in here trying to game the system before we can make a system to control what happens here. The idea is that there could be a project here utilizing these mills. And based on our investigation of the mills, which are vacant, so nobody is being displaced to use those mills, based on our investigation of them, there's a lot of square footage and the ability, if we make the right deal, to finance that deal without additional tax dollars. And in fact, it would bring in more tax dollars. One of the tools could be something like the TAD. Another tool could be something like the energy being produced at the hydroelectric plant, which, if you don't know, is all going to Georgia Power, basically. Right now, there's the average cost of power is extremely low as being produced at those mills. The Canal Authority manages most of the mills. And then for the power that's not used on site, it gets sold back to Georgia Power for a price that's a third what the normal price of electricity is in these areas. So what that represents is more money that could be brought back, that can be kept in the neighborhood in order to fund some of these projects. So all those sources that I just mentioned are money that didn't come out of anyone's pocket or out of existing taxes and represent something like $50 million plus over the course of the time that we're talking about. There's a lot of money in there. Why does that matter? Well, if there's going to be a development here, what should happen is that we want to make sure that the argument that I made, that bringing in money will improve the social base and social outcomes, actually happens. How does that happen? I just told you no one's negotiating for the city. So who's going to watch out for you? Bad news, it continues to be you. And that, I recognize, is an incredible burden on you. I know that because I've been to thousands of community meetings over my life, and most of the time, the community doesn't get the good end of the stick. They're waltzed all along, and then at the end, it's sort of like, oh, well, we didn't really understand what you're saying, so here's a little carrot. The way we prevent that is with something called a community benefit agreement. Community benefit agreement is an official statement of community groups that band together to come up with lists similar to what you have on the wall about what it will take for you to support a project. Now, it has to be something that's achievable within the revenues that we're creating here. And what I suggested when I first came to that group 4 times ago, or whatever it was that we need to start organizing now to make sure that we have enough representation at the table to credibly create a community benefit agreement, and there can't be some other group that comes forward and says, wait, that's not the real one, we're the real one. And someone else says, we're the real one. And then all of a sudden, the commission or the developer has a legitimate reason to say, well, we don't know what the community wants, and you're back to what you just described. So I think that the purpose of me being here is to try to assure that you guys are on some path that you're comfortable with in terms of creating this. I'm happy to come in as much or as little as would be helpful to you to continue to facilitate creating something like this. And I'm also happy to look at your list of constituent organizations and say, well, you know who's missing here, if I know who that is. But I can also pass it on to other people to say that. Because those are your danger areas. You need to complete something that's legitimate, and then you need to stand together behind it. So that when the commission or the developer or whomever presents some plan, you can say, hey, no, we told you it needs to have these things, and if it doesn't, we're not with you. Now, how much political power will that have? Depends how much of you are together, how reasonable the requests are, and how persistent you are about putting them in front of the people. I can promise you that I will promote it as I promote the interests of all the others. You understandably can be skeptical of that until it happens. So really, you want to rely on yourselves creating a strategic way of making this happen. One of the very strategic ways of doing it, and to lower the burden on yourselves, is to create a wide enough tent that you can rotate who is showing up at different meetings and consistently be giving the same message. So it's not on all of you to show up to every meeting all the time, which is exhausting. So that's sort of the context of why I'm here. There really is no plan yet. There's a plan to try to get GRU to come into some portion of those mills. The mills are over double the amount of square footage that is on the entire Somerville campus right now. So we can pretty much guarantee that they won't be occupying the whole thing. So the hope is to use the other one as more of a tax creator. Since we have one that's a tax eater, we want to use one that's a tax creator so that together they balance the positive growth. And the extra dollars that are in there we can use to fund community benefits, whatever those might be. So that's as much of a plan as exists right now. Yes, sir.
Suppose the GRU project does not come through with their plan B?
There are a lot of other things we could put in there that would generate activity, but the easiest thing to do is to put in a local, deep-rooted organization that already is there.
That would be the anchor for the basic.
Yeah, that would be the best. I mean, it's really very hard to put in things that aren't already in the community. So when we start out by interviewing as far away as SRS, but also Fort Gordon, GRU, the big economic drivers, and trying to figure out who could actually fill that much square footage. If it doesn't get filled, it's not going to have the desired effect. And the other positive from a city revenue standpoint, and dangerous probably from your standpoint, is that it comes with it people to move in, to walk the streets, to live here. It changes the balance of the neighborhood. It has an effect on your real estate prices. You need to, and this is what we talked about last time, or 2 times ago, because I wasn't here last time, about how we protect renters that aren't owners from escalating real estate prices. They call it Thrive in Place. It's very new. Not a lot of successful things have happened. We're hoping to make this a successful example of how to do that. Sir?
Yes, I'd just like to know who would be paying for the asbestos abatement on this particular situation.
Well, so far the Canal Authority's been paying for it, out of money that they generate out of that power that I was talking about.
All right, well, that's where the danger lies.
They've done it on grants.
Some grants as well, yeah. But there's a lot left. There's a lot.
$485,000 a year for generating power that the Canal Authority gets.
Mm-hmm. It's actually more than that, because those aren't their only
I'm quoting
plans.
them. That's what they have put out.
They were quoting on the 2 mills, perhaps. There's more mills, and then there's property up north as well that they manage. And then they also have funding from other sources. So I think that they're, so far, have been a very positive player. And, you know, the other thing they could say is, hey, we keep all the power and we'll sell it to you. In which case, all that money goes away and we don't have the ability to finance it. So far, they're 100% on board with what I just described.
Wow. I'd like to stop just one moment and take a half a step back. Hold right there. Because I want to say, who has questions? Laura, did we address some of your concerns? Do you have anything else you want to bring forward? I mean, this is when we want to really tear this open. We've gathered this wonderful group of people. We need to bind this wound if we can. And so I want to stop and say, Laura.
My last question is, Harrisburg is a community. We don't have businesses in Harrisburg except for maybe a wonderful baby tackle down Broad Street. There are very few businesses. This is a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
How can you draw business unless you tear down houses and bring business in? Because the corner stores are gone. It's not a tax incentive for small business. It's not. It's for big business. And every parcel in this neighborhood is under Opportunity Zone. Mm-hmm. So the only way you can bring that business in, other than those mills, is to build something and create it. And I think way before you came to this community, we knew a lot about what was going on in this community, and people that were already putting properties together. And we know that. And we know where and all these things. So this is why we're here asking these questions. And Al is right. You better watch it from start to finish. Because
I totally agree.
in my studying of all community zones through the state of Georgia, they are not whole neighborhoods. The majority of them are not. They are Sibley Mill area, would it be Opportunity Zone? 15th Street, Broad Street, Walton Way. Not an entire residential neighborhood.
I mean, if you want my honest opinion, I don't understand why you put an opportunity zone in this area, except to try to attract someone into one of the mills. It doesn't, for the reasons that you just said.
Why wasn't that the Opportunity Zone?
What's
Why
that?
was that not the Opportunity Zone?
I don't know. I wasn't here. I wasn't a part of that
These
decision.
are all the
I think
questions.
a part of it might be that the strategic part maybe wasn't happening as much. There aren't any. We were just talking about this. There aren't any planners in the planning department.
Wait a minute, there is.
Wait,
They're not planning for it. There's plenty of planners in this county. Like Augusta Tomorrow and a lot of other folks are planning big things for it.
Fair enough, but I'm saying the opportunities. Augusta Tomorrow doesn't make the opportunity zone happen, as far as I know. That's a governmental action. So at some point, listen, I understand that things happen. Since I've been here, things have happened that I've had to fight tooth and nail that were against what I understood were supposed to happen. That's the way it goes in a community of this size until we build enough to have the resources to have the public institutions that defend the public good. And we're stuck without that right now. The process to get there is dirty and tough. But if you have another idea, throw it out. I mean, what we need to do is try to figure out how to generate more dollars here so that we can pay for some of these other things, whether they're a housing land bank to protect renters, or parks, or security, or cameras. Like, that money has to come from somewhere. We don't even have enough money in the county right now to mow the lawns. I mean, it's not, you know this. I'm not telling you something new. And so I recognize, I'm not going to allay your fears and tell you that they're untrue. You really have to follow it from the beginning to the end. You must. I'm here to try to help you with that, if you'll accept my help. But I can't do anything other than that. I'm not going to pretend that there aren't other powers out there with their own interests. That's the point of bringing in someone who can try to navigate between them. And we try to put everything into the open. Sometimes people don't put things in the open. And I'll tell you, I fight that battle on a daily basis. Al can attest to my frustration earlier today over things that we thought were solid, and now we're fighting back for it. That's just the way it goes.
I got one thing. Thank you for being so open, first off, and coming down here and talking to us. What nonprofit did you say you were working through? CSRA?
The foundation for the CSRA is what they call our fiscal agent.
Okay.
It means they're a nonprofit, and we're what they call a donor-directed fund, which means that the donors put money into the foundation manages the money and vets how we use it, and will provide an accounting to anyone who asks for it. But we're just a project under the foundation. So that means we don't spend thousands of dollars incorporating, we don't have extra staff, et cetera, et cetera.
The foundation for the CSRA, they're already here, they were already.
Foundation for the CSRA has existed for, does anyone know how long?
I'm asking, I've never heard of them. So
Oh.
I mean, I'd like to know who they
I
are.
think they're the biggest grantor in the
Community.
yeah, community foundation is what we call it.
Who's in charge of that?
Lee,
The assistant.
yeah. We have 3 staffers, I think. And then a lot of people use that as a channel to give out further monies. So
I think you'd like to know the name of your specific.
mine is called the Augusta Regional Collaboration Project. And it's a fund.
You all basically work inside there to save money instead of hiring your own staff, which
Yeah.
is you work under the CSRA Foundation.
I mean, the idea is that I'm a temporary person. Maybe I'm here for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. But you already have all the groups that can be doing the work that I'm doing, and my job is to help them do it until they're self-sufficient. So, I mean, the other thing we could do is create a new whatever authority. But those authorities exist. Why don't we fix them? Which is a much cheaper way of solving the problem.
But not easier.
Nothing's. It seems easier to start an organization until you start. Then it winds up being very, very difficult. Sir?
Just one quick question. The Opportunity Zone does not require or have any percentage of local people who are hired to work with these companies that come in to the Opportunity Zone. Is that correct? There's no obligation to have to hire people who are within the community.
I have to look that up. I thought there was an incentive if there was a percentage of local people. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm in this. When I started in this work from your position, I always thought that I would read enough books and suddenly find the magical tools that solved all this problem and made it easier. After the years of doing it, all I would say is that form follows function. All these like zones and tools and all that stuff, it's kind of a distraction, and I understand how it's been used as a distraction against you. But the answer isn't in those things. The answer is in those things. And trying to hold people accountable for doing the things you want them to do. And let them figure out what the way to do it is, and the funding stream and the TAD. But you need to keep them accountable to it in some sort of public display. But I think we can do a class on opportunity zones. And at the end of it, you'd be no closer to achieving your goals here than you are now. That's one person's opinion.
Okay, are we close to time to start it? I know we've been at this an hour. Are we got a couple more questions? Okay.
My name is Steve Malcolm Corn. I like Walker neighborhood. I'd like to say good luck to you on your proposal. The reason I say we have a hard time accepting things of this nature due to lack of transparency, community involvement, speaking about the overlay, even with all the meetings and so forth. 2 years or so has passed after this thing has passed, this overlay, and now they're saying it's not needed. That's a waste of time. They're talking about moving the city forward, and 2.5 years later it's not needed. Will this be the same results with your opportunity zone?
Not my opportunity zone. I'm against opportunity zones. That's not what I'm saying. I'm anti-opportunity zone, which I've said 3 or 4 times in this meeting. So, will it be the same with my project? I sure hope not, because otherwise I'm wasting my life. I came here because I believe that is possible here. And I was offered to go to Detroit and Vegas and many other places, including places I work, like Philadelphia, Austin, Seattle, New York, Shoreline, San Francisco, and I chose to come here because I believe we can do this here. Is it easy? No. Have other people done it really well elsewhere? No. That's why I'm here, because I think we have an opportunity to do it here. Can I guarantee it would happen? That would be great. It would be worth it.
Experienced in the past, good luck.
Well, isn't it bad? Don't listen. I'm not trying to minimize what you're saying at all, but I think you have to start by making a distinction between people's motives and what they're doing here. And there are different motives, and that's one of the reasons why I'm outside the system. That also makes me less accountable or more accountable, depending on what you look at. But when you talk to Al, or you talk to Melanie, or you talk to me,